This is Linda Lehrhaupt, and I'd like to welcome you to the Mindfulness-Based Teacher Project. Podcast number 1, The Flamenco Player. This story happened to me a couple of years ago when I went to my village in France, where I have had a house for many years, and noticed that there was a new café. Well, in fact, it wasn't new, but it was a store that had reopened as a café, which was formerly an artist's studio. I walked in and it was empty, except for a young man who was sitting playing classical guitar. I had heard the strains of the guitar outside the store, and that's one of the things that brought me in. I felt something special about the atmosphere of the place. He continued to play for a few minutes, and then he came over and said, "Can I help you?" I realized that he was actually running the cafe. After he served me a cup of the strongest coffee I'd had in a very long time, I asked him about him and the cafe. He told me that he was playing classical guitar, and in fact, he was playing a form of flamenco guitar. He said that he opened the cafe so that he would have time to practice. There wasn't that much work to do, but the cafe gave him a place to be every day, a place where he gave structure to his life. And while he was waiting for people to come in to eat and have coffee, it gave him a chance and kind of an open space within form to practice. He was learning flamenco guitar from his grandfather, who 30 years ago, from one moment to the next, had stopped playing. He told me that at the time that he stopped playing, his grandfather was considered one of the 30 best flamenco guitarists in the world, and that he had played all over Southern Europe and was very accomplished. His grandfather had told him, as he was teaching him, that it took 10 years to master each string of the guitar. I thought that was amazing. His grandfather was now about 80 years old, and I believe there are 6 strings on a guitar, and that it would take so many years to play the guitar as if it was a part of one's own being. But I was intrigued by the story that he had stopped playing from one moment to the next. And when I asked his grandson what happened, he said, well, one day he went to a concert of another flamenco guitarist. And according to his grandson, the flamenco player was very exact and was a perfectionist to the extreme. And even though he was celebrated and had many concert venues and things, he was always somewhat dissatisfied with his playing. When he went to the concert that night, he was traumatized and came out vowing that he would never play again, because if he could not play the way he had just heard, then he would rather not play at all. And he stopped. I wondered about that. On the one hand, the wish to achieve a high level of competence, to do something the very best that we can be a motivation. It can encourage us to reach beyond what we thought we could. At the same time, it can become a dam in the sense that it holds and blocks all our talents and keep them stored away, not letting them flow. So this flamenco guitarist's drive or obsession to be perfect not only denied the rest of the world from hearing his gift, but created a life where he no longer was able to share with others because he felt that what he was doing was not good enough. I said to the grandson, how long have you been taking lessons with him? And he said, well, about 10 years ago, I found out that in fact he was a flamenco player. And this young man was about 29 when I met him. I'd never known that he had this gift, and I'd never heard him play. And when I heard the story, I couldn't let go of it. And I went to him, I said, grandfather, please teach me to play. At first, his grandfather refused and said, no, no, no. But his grandson kept persisting. And at some point, a light went on in his grandfather's eyes, and he said, okay. Every day, his grandson would go to him, and he would teach him a very small amount. And he would say, that is enough. Master that. And when you're ready, we'll move to the next level. His grandson was so grateful that he was receiving the teachings that he was willing to do it exactly the way his grandfather said. At some point, his grandfather began writing music for him, only for him to practice. And the young man said that it was among the most beautiful music that he'd ever heard. But his grandfather refused to publish the music or let it be heard anywhere. One day he looked at his grandson and he said, you are the future. You will carry the music forward of our family. I'm too old now, and I've been too strict with myself. But you have the chance. Go forward. Don't bind yourself the way I did. And practice. His grandfather is still alive, and he continues every day to go to him to receive the music. I thought about this story a lot. And one aspect of it that I'd like to share with you is about how this can relate to our lives as teachers. Again and again, I've met students in training who are so paralyzed by their fear of not being perfect that they tie themselves up in knots and make their life miserable and really create such a tension around the teaching that when they do begin to teach, you can feel it and hear it in their voice. We all have periods where we want to really give the best that we can. And that can be, again, a wonderful motivation behind teaching, behind working hard, behind preparing things to a level where we feel we've done the very best we can. But doing the very best we can and feeling so paralyzed that we cannot go on is a very different story. I think that the story of the grandfather and his son kind of can give an example of how we can work with this as teachers. If we can go beyond our own sense of being judged and really focus that we are teaching our students what we can at this time, and we're doing the best we can, but the responsibility for actually working with and taking it to another level will be our students. We can only give of ourselves in a way that is truly generous if we can also accept that sometimes we will not be perfect. We will simply be very good. And even sometimes when we make a mistake, if there is such a thing as making a mistake, there's always the opportunity to begin again. If we stop completely, then we will not transmit to our students, or we will transmit, but only something that is paralyzing. And that's where this aspect of every string needing 10 years to master can be inspiring. It takes time to develop a sense of mastery in whatever one does, and especially in teaching. So I encourage you to make mistakes, to let go in teaching, to just accept that where you are at this moment and what you're doing is the very best you can at this time, and that you can learn from it and go on, but that everyone will continue to hear your beautiful music and that it will not be hidden away. I really would like to encourage you. Let your gift be heard. Please, let the music play. Thank you for listening to the Mindfulness-Based Teacher Project.